what's happening in Scotland. The one or two people who giggled when she mentioned Partick Thistle there, could you stay behind? And that wasn't a joke. But if you see me at 3 o'clock looking really shifty, really nervous, you'll know why. I've come really to talk to you about what's been happening in Scotland over the last 12 years. And it's been so long since we had a new curriculum called Curriculum for Excellence. I don't know if you know that are aware of what's been happening in Scotland. But about 12, 13 years ago we started a new curriculum, and it's still a new curriculum. And I think one of the points I want to make today is, even 12 years on, the fact that it is a new curriculum suggests that when you make curricular changes, you really can't make them overnight. And I'm really pleased to say that we still have a new curriculum, and we still have a curriculum that is ongoing. The reason I called my presentation an 8-word manifesto, and I'll come to that later on, is because we started with 8 words, and 8 words that we wanted to have our children come out of school with, and that will become clearer as I go. And it was a very simple idea that what do we want from our education system? This is before there was anything else filled in to that blank page. So we were given a blank slate and given 8 words to think about, and that will become clearer as I go. I'm going to apologise in advance if there are any bits that I go and read here, because as you'll see in the programme, when the programme turns up, pedigree, we'd never do that. We'd never have programmes in the first place. What I've said is I write a widely unread blog called Just Trying to Be Better Than Yesterday, and in that blog there are some fabulous sentences, and in my writing, when you put them all together, but there are 1 or 2 really brilliant sentences. So if I go over here and read something, it's partly nerves, but partly because I want to read a really brilliant little passage for you. But I think it's really good. Anyway, so we've got this 8-word manifesto. Imagine that scenario then, that you were given a complete blank slate with your curriculum. The people in charge decided that this isn't working. We're going to wipe everything off of this and we're going to start from scratch. That's pretty much what happened in Scotland about 12 or 13 years ago. We were given devolved powers in 1999, which is kind of appropriate considering we've got independence vote coming up as well. But, and because of that, we started having this conversation. Remember, Tony Blair had those big conversations with the public. Let's have a conversation, let's talk about things. And we had that in Scotland. We had what was called, I think, what it was called, the National Debate on Education, which I don't know if you were involved in, David, but you were there at the time. And part of that came around because then and even now, I think there are 1 in 5 children in poverty in Scotland, living in poverty. And education wasn't changing things for them. And, you know, we had probably about similar levels of outcome to England at the time, maybe slightly better at the time, but I think they're kind of level now. But it clearly wasn't working for every child, and we wanted to decide for ourselves how we would change that, and how teachers and how schools and how education systems could change that. So, 12 and 13 years later, we're still talking about that. And we're still trying to work it out for ourselves. And one of the great things about it is that the whole curriculum from 3 to 18 has been completely transformed. Never been done before. The little bits have been done. We've changed the primary curriculum from 5 to 14. We've changed the secondary curriculum. We've changed the senior curriculum. This was the complete works that we were changing over the last 12 and 13 years. And we're kind of coming to the end of the process of change, which I'll get to later on, hopefully. Now, flashing forward from 1999 to 2004, in October 2004, a really important thing happened in Scottish history, and you may or may not know. We had our official opening of our Parliament building. I don't know if you've been to Edinburgh and seen it, but there was a whole controversy over the money that was spent on this building. But in October 2004, this building was open, and it is very impressive if you ever see it. For that occasion, our national poet Edwin Morgan who is a fabulous poet for you English teachers out there. I'm not sure you would have come across him. He wrote a specially commissioned poem called Open the Doors for the opening of the Parliament. And I'm going to use that as a backbone for some of the things I'm going to say today. I'm going to change some of the wording just for the purpose. I've never used one of these before. But, and it starts off with this little verse. Open the doors, light of the day shine in, light of the mind shine out. We have a curriculum which is more than a curriculum. There is a commerce between inner and outer, between brightness and shadow, between the world and those who think about the world. And I've changed a couple of words, so those are bad. So bear with me on that because I think it does make sense. And one of the parallels I want to make here, exactly 1 month after this event, the first ever document on a curriculum for excellence was released. The first result of the national debate on education was released, and it was the first idea of what possibly might happen in the future. And the outcome to that was these 8 words, and this is the 8-word manifesto that I referred to in the title. What do we want from every child who comes out of our education system, 3 to 18? At the age of 18, successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, effective contributors. That was it. That was pretty much it at the end of that first debate, that first conversation. There was nothing within that. We haven't filled in any of the details yet, but for every child to come out of school at the age of 18 as a successful learner, confident individual, responsible citizens and effective contributors. And who could really have any problem with that? Well, there were issues, and those issues will hopefully I'll discuss them. The problem with the curriculum for excellence is you're kind of setting yourself up for a fall when you put the word excellence in the title of your curriculum. Because how do we define what that is? And if you don't reach that, what happens? Yeah, when the thing is not excellent at the end of it. So I would argue, and I think David Cameron here might back me up on this, that it was never a curriculum in the first place. It wasn't written as a curriculum. It was written as a sort of vision statement of what we might want if we had that opportunity to completely wipe everything out and start again. So, here's the problem. The problem at this point is when you've got that big blank slate, how do we fill it? And how do we start to put the parts together that will help every child in Scotland and every child in poverty as well? So, this is how we did it. Again, discussions started on what we would teach, and so we broke it into these 8 categories, which are more or less familiar to what you would have down here. I would imagine everything we teach fits into those. But there were sort of wider categories, I think, that we could play with, really. But still, at this point, I think I'd been teaching for about 5 years, and I just saw a huge opportunity here and a huge chance to really make something and change culture. And I think that's what education does. It's a societal change, and if it's not doing that, and if it's not helping kids in poverty, then it's, we're kind of failing. But it was a dream, I think, but it was a dream worth fighting for, I think, because what else do we do for these kids? We don't really do enough for them. Right, so what happened? Something predictable happened after that. You saw the document with the 8 words. And so we were sent little documents like this. They were nicely printed and really expensively printed. You're familiar with those things that end up in your tray when you go in on a Monday morning. Isn't it lovely? It's got nice schools with pictures, all doing exams, and everyone's hugging each other, and it all looks great. And that's fine, because I'm sure that is a part of our education system. But the paperwork started growing. Forget what to touch here. And so everyone got one of these huge folders in the end. So it grew and it grew and it grew. And we all got these huge folders. I mean, really, not your rubbish. I mean, this was expensive quality folders that looked fantastic. And I still have mine up, and it fits between assessment is for learning folder, and my cooperative learning folder, which I never touched. It was wonderful, it's green, and it sort of glints in the sunshine, and it's great. But it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew into this thing as well. I'm not sure if that's quite clear, but there were for the 8 subject areas, there was a poster. We love a poster, we do love a poster. And on every one of those, there are about 100 experiences and outcomes, as we call them. So it's gone from 8 words to that, and that's just one subject. That's just the English and literacy outcomes. What the hell went wrong? It just spiraled out of control. But still, we are teachers and we make it happen. There are a huge swathe of, inverted commas, conservative, shall we say, critics in Scotland who were against this whole thing from the beginning. Why change something that's working? They said, kids are being successful, kids are going to university, kids are doing well, the nice leafy suburbs were doing fantastically well in the exam system, but a lot of kids weren't, so why change it? So when there was the negativity, when these things started happening, the press kind of took over, and there was all sorts of terrible stories about it wasn't working, children weren't being taught things, all they do is sit around talking in groups, all they're doing is talking and making things and doing posters, not actually learning anything. And those were the stories that started coming in. We're not assessing anything, just let children talk about stuff. And that was the thing about teaching autonomy. I've spent all my career listening to teachers say, well, just let us teach and we'll do it well. Just let us do it. We were given this opportunity, and teachers were doing it well. But with teacher autonomy, and again, this might be quite controversial, not every teacher got on board with that, and that's why there started to be this drift away from those original 8 words. And if we go back to, can I go back to that? I won't go back to that. If we can go back to those 8 words, I just wanted to make a point about successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, effective contributors. Could anyone spot a flaw in that? And what might happen there? How do you define what a successful learner is? How do you know what a successful learner is? Traditionalist, good exam results. But that's not what it's about. That's not, we love exam results, we love doing our classes doing well, there's not a teacher in here that doesn't. But it's got to be more than that. If you want to change a system, if you want to change a society, it has to be more than that. How do you define what a confident individual is? How do you know? There are ways you do it, but everyone's going to have a different definition. Why isn't a successful individual and a confident citizen? Why not a responsible learner? So, definitions were a problem, because if we didn't come to some consensus over what those things, then there were always going to be problems. And I still think that's a problem just now. I think there are a lot of teachers that are not really 100% sold on this idea. So we're ending up with this. We're ending up with confusion and negativity over what's happening and what stories, but don't believe that. In those outcomes for literacy in English, the word knowledge doesn't appear once. Twitter explodes. Blog posts. It's terrible, no knowledge. But it's implied. And that's the thing, we're not idiots teachers. The experiences and outcomes, they're all phrased in things that the children can do. I can do this. I am able to do this. And all your sort of really, criticisms come in about it, but what's wrong with it? Because they can't do that stuff without the knowledge. So the knowledge is implied. He's filming with his glasses, so if
I'll make him a bit nervous.
I think so. It's like some kind of Star Trek thing.
It's Geordie the
So knowledge is implied. I don't think we have to assume that because we're asking kids to do things and have skills and abilities that we're not asking them to have knowledge. That whole knowledge skills debate is